Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bankroll Burners, the poker podcast for players who can't stop getting it in bad. I'm Mike,
And I'm Josh.
and we are here as always. We are bringing you some hands we have played recently. We're going to go through them. We're going to talk about how we maybe could have played them better, and maybe we'll learn something along the way.
You know, one can only hope, although the fact that we're still bringing you this podcast means that the learnings must have been slim over the past, whatever it is, 18 weeks. We've been doing this for a while all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know. It's like crazy, especially because we have such a huge following.
Well, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. I think at least it's a fun way to go over some hands, share what we've learned, and hopefully, you know, at the very least, direct our listeners to some better resources that they might learn something better from.
Exactly, yeah. Whatever we say, definitely don't listen to us. I mean, if you are part of our small listening group, you know, we do wonder. We do wonder why. So.
Hey, it's great. You know, some of you find us on literally searching YouTube. But anyway, let me hop in. Speaking of punting off money, here's a hand that I played extraordinarily poorly. I think I made one good decision in it. Actually, two. I think I might have maybe played two streets okay, but I know that's like half.
There's only 4 streets, so
I know, but the two in the middle I really played so badly that it's the only reason why the river was okay. But
okay.
Putting the cart before the horse a little bit. This is a 1-3 game. This was played at Chasers Poker Room. Been trying to diversify a little bit more beyond Encore as the Encore Boston Harbor continues to do its best to run itself into the ground.
I mean, they really are trying to like kill poker in that room, like actually on purpose, right?
Yeah. I mean, it must be. I mean, Bart Hansen. If you all know him, I'm sure you do because you must be somewhat of a poker fan if you listen to our podcast. And please go check him out if not, because he actually knows what he's talking about. He actually made a video this week about kind of the state of poker there. And yeah, I mean, beyond some things I didn't even know about, given that I'm a low stakes player, but things like, I mean, you've been there once, you know that you can't cash out chips at the cage upstairs in the poker room. But beyond that, you also can't buy in for more than $2,000 at the cage in the poker room, which means that if you're playing high stakes like 10-10 PLO or 10-25 Hold'em, you have to go downstairs and buy in for like $10,000 in front of all the like riffraff, as Bart calls them, the like riffraff of Everett, Massachusetts, who are like buying to go gamble at like, you know, dollar roulette. So it's very weird. They don't have like, you know, they don't have like boxes and things. So you just have to walk in with like a lot of cash and buy in at like the main cage. It's just a bizarre setup.
Yeah.
But
no, it's pretty weird. But okay, so you're at Chasers, which is, you know, a pretty good room for what I've heard. I've never played there. But
yeah, and for what it's worth, I have been impressed with Chasers. Last time I went to Boston Billiards, as I mentioned, the action was yeah, it was like just a mediocre game where it just was a kind of empty and sad. Chasers has been quite a good room the last couple times I've went. I've been there twice. Both times the game has been great. A lot of good action. They run a lot of high hand promotions, so they take 10% up to 5 plus 2 from any pot over 20 for the promos.
I mean, that's still not bad.
No, and they're actually good promos. Like on Sunday, you know, it's like hourly high hand for 1,200.
Oh wow, that's really good.
So they actually do.
Are you playing 1-3 there, or you're playing 2-5?
I'm playing 1-3 there because they do have a 1-3 game now. And it's actually kind of nice. Another nice part about playing 1-3 there is that it's not the smallest game because they usually have like 8 1-2 tables, like 2 1-3 tables and 1 2-5 table. And like both times I've had to sit down at the 1-2 table for, you know, 20 minutes or so while I wait for my 1-3 seat, and it's just such a different game with the promos. Like when I sat down at the 1-2 table, there was a guy who was just like raising every hand because he just felt like it. And like one older woman literally like tutted at him and was like, "Don't you know there's a high hand on?" Like every time he raised, which is just classic lowest stakes. You know what I mean? So playing the 1-3, you're kind of a little bit beyond that, where there are still some like OMCs and nits and people who are chasing the high hand, but less so because they kind of have to make that decision to play a slightly bigger game where they might actually be forced to play poker.
And what's the cap on this 1-3 game?
So it's also 500 cap.
Okay.
For a 1-3 game. So same game structure pretty much as Encore, and they didn't even run this game, so I assume they were prior to Encore reopening, so I assumed that they were kind of pressured into it. But anyway, enough about the discussion of the state of poker in New England. We're playing 1-3, and the effective stack is going to be 500 in this hand. This is going to be from a guy who is I would describe as relatively ABC. He's probably a little bit better than the average player. He's certainly, raising a decent amount, entering pots as the raiser. Seemed a little bit call happy over the course of the day, but definitely, pretty good. The other player is more of the loose passive type. I played a number of hands against him. He was running quite hot, where he was like limp calling and like running into hands left and right, kind of college kid sort of vibe.
Nice.
So we're playing 8-handed. It's an 8 max game at Chasers also, which is quite nice, I think. I like playing a little bit shorter handed.
8-handed is so much better than 9.
And in a 1-3 game with no straddle on, this particular player is going to be in middle position, which is also UTG +1. And he's going to he's going to open the action to 6.
Wow.
A huge raise.
So this is the ABC guy?
No, this is the passive guy, and he just seemed to be kind of clicking buttons a lot of the time. But I did notice one tendency is that he did a lot of donking when he had strong value. There was a different hand where I raised him on the turn, and then he just donked. He had donked turn. I raised him on the turn, and then he donked river, and I was just forced to fold because I had a draw that missed. But I think he had some strong value there. But he raises to 6, which he had done a couple times. With varying hand strengths. He's been varying his raise sizes. The ABC player to his left in the low jack puts in another raise to 20, which is almost like a first raise at 1-3. Right. Like, I've seen people open to 20.
Yeah, I mean, so this is kind of like it's like a 3-bet, but not.
Yeah, it's basically like a straddle and an open almost.
Yeah.
And now I am in the cutoff with 6 of clubs, 6 of diamonds.
Okay.
And I elect to just call here. I don't think anyone is going to be doing a whole lot of 4-betting behind me, and I'm definitely getting the odds sitting 500 deep with the aggro player and 750 deep with the middle position player.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you can mix in some raises here for sure. I might tend to raise here just to try to drive the early position player out and possibly just pick up the pot if we think that low jack is just making a move. But I mean, calling can't be that bad. So for the reasons you stated, so you have 6 of clubs, 6 of diamonds.
Correct. Right? Yeah, and if there were aggressive players behind me or people who were more likely to squeeze if I did this, I could probably also find some folds with this hand. I mean, to an open, just if that. But that wasn't the case. The people to my left were pretty standard. There were not many 4-bets without like aces and kings in this game. And it folds all the way back around to that original opener who makes the call. So we're going 3 ways with about 60 in the pot after rake. Well, we'll call it 60. And the flop comes out quite favorable for us. It comes out 10 of hearts, 8 of diamonds, 6 of spades.
Ah, very nice. Bottom set.
So we flop bottom set in a multi-way pot. And things go, and this is where things get a little bit interesting, as the middle position player now leads out for 50. Which is almost a pot-sized bet, and something, as I mentioned, he's definitely done in the past with pretty thick value. And then the low jack calls.
And we're in cutoff, right?
And we're sitting in the cutoff, so we are in position. And my thought here is that I can flat call here, given that we're in position. There's not a whole lot of cards that we need protection against, although there obviously are some. And it was quite a large sizing taken by the middle position player.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that middle position can have some 2 pairs here, to be
Absolutely.
fair. I also think ace-10 is a possibility. I mean, if we think about the sort of bullshit raises that someone might do, like raising to 6, like what are the hands? Is like ace-10. Like I don't really think 9-7 is very likely. Like
I do think he probably could have at least 9-7 suited.
I think it's possible, but I just say I don't see a lot of bullshit raises with that kind of hand. I would see like a limp most often, or like from a competent player, maybe obviously people open that hand sometimes, although probably not under the gun +1. I guess I'm thinking that we have the best hand and I want to shovel money in this pot. I mean, if we call here, the pot's going to be like a hair over 250, right? And
a hair over 200, I think.
I'm sorry, a hair over 200, that's right. And we're going to have 430 behind. We'll have two pot sized bets left. Versus if we raise now, we make it like 200. Let's just say. Probably don't have any thin value raises on the board, so you could even go like 250. But let's say if you did 200, and you get one caller, you're looking at like 460 in the pot, and you have like a little over, like maybe a 2/3 pot size bet behind, which I think is quite nice. Like, I don't know. I think I would like to raise here personally.
I think you're probably right. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know. The other thing is, if we made it like 250, I don't know that we're gonna get called a whole lot by like king 10 or like even ace 10. Like, might just be a fold to such a big raise.
Possible. Yeah, I don't love. I think 250 would also just screw up stack sizes. I think 200 is the number.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking, if I call, I keep bluffs in, like I keep the low jack, I kind of keep both players in also, where, we might be able to get better action. But ultimately, I think just trying to raise, like, get stacks in with one of the players is probably a more profitable scenario. So I don't really know why I called, but I was like, actually, like, my hand is, it's quite good, but there are definitely hands that both players can have that beat me. I don't mind keeping both players. Like, I don't need a ton of protection, but I mean, there are a number of draws out there too, like Jack 9, even something like 10-9, 8-7, 8-9, stuff like that might call a raise, especially sort of in live poker where people love calling with pair plus draws.
Right.
Even when the hand is actually not that strong, it doesn't have a lot of equity against what I'm representing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I want to raise. I really do want to raise here. I don't even love taking it. Like, I don't know. Like, if you're in a situation where you're going to get called a bunch for like 2 more streets by 2 more people, I start to wonder whether we're even good anymore. Like, I would rather get this heads up.
Yeah, and I know. I think it just has to be a raise. I mean, we made a set, and it's like there's action in front of us. Let's just shovel money in. But I don't.
Also, we're never folding. So like, what the heck, So all right, but go ahead.
So we again, mistake number 1. I did warn you. Warn you that this hand was an absolute dumpster fire on my part. So I call, and we're gonna go see a turn. We got about 2x pot behind, and the turn comes an interesting one. It's the Queen of Clubs. Okay. Not my favorite card in the world. Jack 9
gets there. Sure.
Jack 9 gets there. I mean, it's possible that the low jack could have pocket queens, but obviously that's not a lot of combos, but it is a hand.
I don't really see how either player has Jack 9 here. I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't think either of them do. Like, if you think about, like, again, I mean, I don't really think he's donking $50 with Jack 9. That doesn't, like, donking for almost pot with Jack 9. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And then if you think about, like, low jack, is he making it 20 over that weird raise with Jack 9 suited? Like, maybe, but probably not. He's probably just calling or folding. I don't know.
Yeah, I think middle position, the original raiser to 6 is more likely to have Jack 9. Like, it might just be something that it's like, yeah, that sound looks fun. Like, 6, like, and then he has a straight draw and just decides to donk. Like, it's certainly in his range, I would say. But now he leads for 60 on this turn.
Okay, well now we know he doesn't have Jack 9.
And the low jack calls again.
Okay, I mean, I want to just rip it here, right?
Yeah, and at this point, I'm kind of thinking, like, if I rip it, am I getting any action? Because
the pot is now is like 330. So you're, yeah.
And it's weird because if I jam, it's also worth noting that the middle position player has more behind. So at this point, after the call, the low jack has 370, and then the middle position player has 620. So I don't know. I don't know that I would jam. I'd probably have to raise, to like 400 or I don't know. I mean, maybe I can just jam, but that seems like
you probably aren't going to jam. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wonder if you can almost like, now I'm wondering, could we almost like click it where, like, I want to make it big enough that LJ folds and we get it heads up with the UTG +1, and then we get it all in a little river. That's what I'm thinking if I'm in your spot. So maybe we make it like 200.
Yeah, that might be. I was kind of thinking. I mean, I totally agree that I definitely have to raise here. But I don't.
Okay.
Just this, as I said, this hand was just atrociously played by me. I was kind of thinking, I'm really kind of kicking myself on this turn. I was like, wow, I really had to raise the flop because like this is like a straightening card. It just looks so strong to raise here. Like it's kind of something that we talk about a lot in poker is like it's so much better to raise flops than turns a lot of the time, just because like if you call flop raise turn, it's just such like a wildly strong play a lot of the time.
I don't know if I agree with you, but I actually have started to try to do that more because I've been trying, because like you get more bluffs through that way too. But,
that's true. Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean I don't know what I would be bluff. Like this is a weird board to bluff on. Like maybe I'd be like I don't know. I'm probably not. I don't know if I'm calling a pot size bet on the flop with 8-9, and then like turning that into a bluff here, double gutted. Well, like
and there's no
flush draw. It's complete rainbow.
Flush draw. I mean, yeah, 8-9 is probably like the most likely hand.
Like if I wanted to bluff, just thinking about. I mean, not that I need to be balanced in this scenario against these players. Probably can exploitatively raise significantly more value.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's fair. You can always. I mean, I do like to think about at least how we would be balanced in theory. I mean, you might have Jack 8 with a backdoor on the flop, possibly, maybe. That'd be kind of weird, but I think pair plus double backdoor, possibly.
Yeah, maybe 8-9. I might have 8-9 or 7-8 because I probably wouldn't be flatting pre-flop with Jack 8.
Jack 8 suited. Yeah,
you probably would not be flatting the the raise and then I probably wouldn't be calling 20 from the cutoff. Would probably have to just fold that hand, but possibly some 9-8, 8-7.
Also, like Ace-6 suited, possible.
Yeah, ace, but I mean that hand doesn't have that much equity. Is the other annoying part,
right,
especially
if you have some like low to no equity bluffs when you're in these spots where there aren't that many logical bluffs.
That's true.
So you're blocking a set there. Anyway, we're getting super nerdy. So
I mean, really, I think I should have raised the flop, but as played, I think I probably should just raise the turn and try and get a heads up because now it is kind of a dicey board, and there are a lot of cards that are just gonna make me vomit.
Yeah, you're not gonna like a lot of cards.
Yeah, but I just call.
Okay.
I don't fold, so it's not an unforgivable sin.
If you folded, you'd have. I don't even know. I'd be disappointed in you, Josh. I wouldn't be mad. I'd be disappointed.
You'd need like the biggest read of all time to make a fold here. But I just call, and it is just like a really. I mean, I really just had to raise one of these streets. But the river now confirms. I mean, is one of those terrible cards that makes me vomit. It's the Jack of Diamonds.
Okay.
So there's now a one-liner to a 9.
Yeah.
And now the middle position player bets 125, and once again, the low jack calls.
All right, you just have to muck this.
Yes. I agree. I mean, I think at this point, it's like, wow. I mean, either I was beat earlier, which I agree seems unlikely, like, given that he bet so small on the turn, like, definitely, I mean, he bet large on the flop, but I can still raise. Something that I've been trying to work on more is, like, raising large sizings, because I know that theoretically you really shouldn't do a whole lot of raising on, like, large sizings. But people don't actually use large sizings correctly in, like, live games, because if a bet is polarized, where they're really representing, like, a very strong hand or a bluff, there's not a ton of, like, value to be gained from raising. But this player probably is not polarizing correctly.
Sure. I mean, he's certainly. Wouldn't call this bet. It's a polarizing bet. It's not very large.
No, I just meant on the flop and sort of in general, because on
yeah, for sure.
That's what I mean is
I wouldn't call. I wouldn't call his bet polarizing. I don't know when live players donk, but I mean he could even have something that he perceives as extremely strong, like 10-8, like on the flop.
That's true.
I think right now. By the way, if low jack had folded, I do like a call here because we're beating Jack 10, which is a hand he would absolutely play this way. So,
yeah, I agree. But really, I think it all comes down to I just needed to raise on the flop when like there is the best opportunity to just pile money in against worse hands. So I don't know what I was thinking. This was just like a real brain fart moment. But that's why we have this podcast, so we can talk about these and laugh at each other.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting that like low jack just calls here. Like I feel like he's got to have he's got to have the 8-9, right? Like what the hell else is he calling with here? I mean, if neither player has a straight, I will be shocked.
Right, or he has like maybe he has like has run into like queen queen or jack jack or something.
Also possible.
Right, but he's definitely I do fold here. Like I tank for a while in like agony and I'm like, how could I possibly have let this happen to myself? Like what an absolute buffoon I am.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like
no, for sure. I mean this is a questionably played hand. I'm sorry to say.
No, did I not lead by saying that. But anyway, we fold, and the middle position player proudly shows King 10 offsuit.
Beautiful.
And the middle position player shows Ace 9 of clubs.
Love it.
So,
yeah,
you know,
you have these guys smoked, Josh.
I know, and you know, it kind of did. That's another reason why I was kind of thinking, you know, if a lot of middle positions range is kind of top pairs, because as we know, donks are often top pair, and larger donks maybe less weighted towards top pairs, but certainly still some amount. You know, are those hands calling a hefty raise on the flop? And I don't know that the answer is yes on such a kind of coordinated board.
The way this guy played this hand, he was calling. He was calling your raise. He was calling your turn bet. He might even call a river shove.
Well, I think we would have set up a turn shove. So
right. Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you were getting max value from this guy. But
so yeah, at the end of the day, it was just not a correctly played hand. I mean, I did realize that after. I was like, wow, this is gonna be a great podcast hand. You know, for all I complain about how I've been running bad this year, I also have hands like this where maybe I, you know, where I really forced myself to run bad.
Yeah, I know, it's okay, it happens. But yeah, I mean, I think slow playing a set, by the way, is not always a mistake. Certainly on certain board textures, and a lot of times from the middle also, because you can let someone in behind you. If you're in a multi-way spot and you can slow play it from the middle. I found that on certain board textures, it can actually be quite a large error to raise the flop with a set in the middle. Like, I think there are a lot of hands behind that you can get action from where you just won't. So I do think slow playing a set is, if you're going to slow play something, like sets are probably not a bad thing to slow play, but not on a board like this, first of all, and not being in position. And not against this action also. So.
Yeah, I agree. No, I think I was you know, trying to get a little bit too fancy, definitely to my detriment. But anyway, as you see, great game where we have this you know, a guy who leads 3 streets with like a 10 without the best kicker, and a guy who calls with a gut shot and then a double gutter with the guy behind him. So it was certainly a great table. I did wind up. I mean, I feel like this hand notwithstanding, it did work out okay. But yeah, that was a fun one. Let's should we move on and erase this from the history books?
Yeah, for sure. Forget about that hand. So I have the 2 hands I have. One of them is like one of my worst played hands I've played in a long time. Like really, I feel real bad about this hand. So I'm gonna save that one for last.
Oh, I was gonna say let's start with it and get the pain out of the way, as I just led with this.
I will be the last hand we go over, so it'll leave a bitter taste in everyone's mouth.
A nice bookend then of our poor play.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, don't worry though. I didn't play this other hand very well either. So this is a 2-5 game, 2-5 at Best Bet Orange Park, 500 cap, of course. We are 400 effective with the main villain in this hand, who is an older Asian guy. I thought he was kind of tight at first, but after playing with him for a while, he really wasn't. Like, he wasn't like crazy loose or something, but he was definitely getting in there, splashing around. He claimed I had won several large pots off of him, but he just claimed to have bluffed me on one hand. I don't know if he was telling the truth, but and we'll never know for sure. But he was getting in the mix. So that's the background. I'm in the small blind in this hand. We are 400 effective with that main villain. And we have a cutoff limp, who is that guy. We have a button limp. And I make a 25 from the small blind with Jack of Spades, Jack of Hearts. And we get it heads up with Boulder Asian guy in the cutoff.
Cool. So there's basically 60 in the pot, and we got 375 left behind.
Correct. Correct.
Unbelievably loose open. I can't believe you would do this.
I know. I am a lag. This is my lag play.
All right. Okay. So what's the flop?
Yeah. So I guess there's not much to go over pre-flop.
No, I think very, very standard.
So the flop comes Queen of Diamonds, Jack of Clubs, 4 of Diamonds. So we flop middle set.
Well, I am familiar with flopping sets, and as an expert, I would recommend checking.
Well, yeah, I don't do that because I think that would be really bad. I do think I do make a mistake, though. I only bet 20. I do think I'm supposed to size up on this board. I think I can go close to pot, probably, if not at least 2/3.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that I've been trying to study more, is moving away from just sort of c-betting a third on like every board where I bet on the flop as the aggressor. Where really, there are a lot of boards where even whether it's heads up or multi-way, you are allowed to size up with hands that you're betting because you're only betting so many hands. And, I think I heard it phrased really well from one of these videos as hands that are almost always best but vulnerable, or hands that, unblock your opponent's calling range.
Yeah.
Kind of similar concepts.
Yeah, obviously I can get called here by all sorts of queens. All sorts of flush draws, straight draws. This board is fine for a limp caller's range. He can have 10-9, he can have 10-8, he can have diamonds, whatever. So
yeah, I mean, and we don't even have the Jack of Diamonds, so he can even have Jack X of Diamonds.
Yeah, which would be awesome. So I definitely should have gone bigger here. I don't think it's such a huge punt to bet 20, but I do bet 20.
Certainly not negative EV.
Yeah, and he calls.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I again. It's also I think always allowed to bet a bit bigger when you have a set that is not top set, because you just unblock so many hands that are going to give you action across multiple streets.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so the turn now is the Ace of Spades.
Okay,
it's obviously a good card for my range. What do you like to do here?
Well, I think I like to keep betting, and now I almost want to size down a bit to keep getting value from queens. And maybe this is an aspect where if we had bet bigger on the flop, we'd be able to kind of bet still a sizable amount that's a bit of a down bet, maybe 40%-ish pot. Just because the card is so good. Like, it's almost like too good of a card, because like a lot of the hands that he's calling with are not going to be excited about. Like it's very much a scare card.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think I sized correctly here. I do like a smaller bet. I did end up betting 60, which isn't huge, but I think 40 probably would have been more appropriate.
Yeah, and if we bet like 40 on the flop, then the pot would be bigger to the point where we could bet 40 or 50 and have it be closer to that small, less than half pot size bet on this card that's just so good for us. But I don't mind a larger bet either, because I still think we're going to get calls from non-believing queens. Probably still going to get calls from plenty of flush draws. And like there are also a lot of like not necessarily bad cards, but certainly scare cards. We don't really want to see a king or a 10 at this point, or a diamond. Like even if those cards don't make our opponent's hand, if they don't make our opponent's hand, they're certainly gonna kill our action.
Absolutely the case, and I don't think I'm allowed to take like a super large sizing here, no matter what, pretty much. So because like he can have the nuts here. So
yeah.
But I don't think he does, because he just calls.
Okay. He calls, which doesn't necessarily preclude him. I mean, it depends on how he's playing, but people do sometimes like to slow play the nuts in position. And straights are certainly a hand that you can do that with, especially if he has 1 or 2 diamonds. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I did actually in game, I was thinking like he really, I didn't really discount him having a straight at all. I was like, he could have a really strong hand here.
Yeah.
Like, I do think it's possible.
Yeah.
I do. People, especially like limp call king 10, people do that sort of stuff all day, like king 10 off. So he can have 60 combos of king 10.
Yeah, but there are so many combos of queen still, I think also. People love limp calling like queen 10 and queen 9. So,
for sure. So the river is where I really don't think I really feel like I played the river quite poorly. So the river comes now the 9 of hearts.
Okay, it's a pretty big brick, I'd say.
In the moment, I was like, that's a straightening card, which was a big mistake. Because, like, yes, 10-8 does get there, but I really don't think he ever has 10-8, unless it's specifically 10-8 of diamonds. I think I was much more concerned about this card in real time than I should have been. And that's a problem for me. I know it's a weak spot in my game is like if I just see a straightening card or a flushing card, I don't stop to think really how relevant it is. I'm just like, oh, it's a straightening card. Oh, it's a flushing card. So that's definitely a weak spot in my game that I screwed up here. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, it's pretty much just King 10 or nothing that our opponent has that beats us. Like, I agree. I don't really think he ever has 10-8 unless he has specifically 10-8 of diamonds.
Right.
So I want to bet big. I kind of want to bet big here. I mean, he's shown interest in the pot. He's either got a draw, in which case he's not going to pay off any size. Maybe he's got a queen, which could pay off a smaller sizing. But he also could have, like, ace-x of diamonds, which might pay off a pretty large bet.
Absolutely. And this is where I was, like, really screwed up. I really, like... was like thinking to myself, I was like, man, you know, I feel like, I mean, if you think about how much we have behind, like we're like 220 behind, or sorry, about 300 behind, excuse me. The 220 in the pot, about 300 behind. And I was like, I was like thinking like, could I bet fold? That was what I was thinking. I was like, could I bet fold this hand for value? But I realized like, that's crazy. It should be a bet call. But in the moment I was like, I feel like I need to bet a small enough amount that I could fold to a jam because I feel like, you know, he could jam here with like King 10, you know, which is a hand he could have. That's what I was thinking in the moment. But I think that's just playing a little too scared.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think our hand is like, yes, if he has King 10, I mean, he has King 10. That's literally the only hand that beats us of note. And he just had, I mean, he might raise worse value possibly. If he's got like ace 4, like he might jam with ace 4 or ace 9, like ace 9 of diamonds. He might jam with that hand.
Well, so it's interesting here. So I end up betting 90 with the intention of folding to a jam. And he pretty quickly makes it 200.
Okay, so we're just getting 1,000,000 to 1.
Right, we could never fold here. My question was, are we supposed to jam?
I think so. I mean, it's only like 95 more. I think he raises with enough worse hands, and he can just never, ever fold if we jam. Like, literally never.
No, I think I really am dumb for not betting larger and not jamming here. I did end up...
Yeah.
I really felt dumb after this hand. You know, I mean, I just feel like I left so much value on the table. But anyway, I call, and he shows ace 9 of offsuit.
Oh. Did he have a diamond?
No.
Okay, so... Oh, wow. So maybe an optimistic... Maybe us betting small on the flop really let us make the maximum here.
Possible. Yeah, obviously if we had bet large on the flop, I think he lost that.
Oh yeah, that hurts for sure. When you're like, wow, damn, like, you know, it just feels. I had a hand like this that's not gonna make the podcast, where there wound up running out a 4-liner on board. There was like ace king. The board ran out like ace king 6, and I had raised preflop with pocket 6s, and I bet and he called, and the turn was a jack, and he bet and I bet and he called, and the river was a queen, putting a 1-liner to a 10, and I bet small and he raised, and I was like, he just never has a 10 here, like, and I should have probably jammed and I didn't, and I've kind of felt the same way where I was like, he's definitely just like, he just has a bunch of random 2 pairs in here that are like, I have 2 pair, I raise, which is just a thing that like, you know, I've certainly been guilty of in the past, but live players, you know, it's one of these things of absolute versus relative hand strength where it's like, you know, when you bet 3 streets, it's like ace 9 is probably not supposed to be a raise here.
No, for sure not.
You know what I mean? So it's one of the, and I've certainly been guilty of kind of overvaluing that kind of thing as well. But interesting spot, and kind of another place to eke out that value.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like I definitely did botch that, and I struggle sometimes. Like this is what I'm trying to work on lately in my game, is like really trying to think about where I am at in my range, because like I'm really at the top of my range. Like, I guess I could have King 10 here too, but more often I like, you know, like Queens, Jacks, and King 10, you know, those are the good hands I have. Like, I'm at the top of my range. I should be going for the maximum. And if, you know, if he has me beat at these stack depths, fine, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the other part. That's something I've been trying to think about a lot is stack depths. It's like, you know, if you have a set and you're like, I mean, you started this hand like 80 big blinds deep, like, you should go broke with that set. Right. Unless the board is like ridiculously wet, you know? Like unless you wind up playing the board because it runs out of straight. Like fine, right? But like most of the time if you're playing 80 big blinds deep and you flop a set, you should just go broke with it most of the time. Yeah, it's just one of those things that is quite difficult to wrap your head around, because a lot of the time you kind of see the money in the middle and you're like, you know, wow, this is a big pot. I should play it a little cautiously, and then you think about it afterwards and it's like, well, I should have Like my hand. I should have raised here. Damn.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move along.
Okay, so we've got another hand. This is also from Chasers. 1-3 game. This is a different table. This was actually a session I played today. This was also a great table.
Fresh hot hand for you folks. This is a fresh one.
This is what the things I do for you. I go out and I have a big losing session just to generate hands for the podcast. No, I jest.
Losing. But
what?
I said you didn't jest about losing.
No, but that's all right. I when you get aces stacked by 10-6, that's just it's just your time. So no issues there. We are playing 1-3. It's 8-handed. This table has varied a lot over the course of the day. For a while, there was one fellow who had the 10-6 against my aces, who was like basically raised with like any Broadway card in his hand pre-flop, and otherwise limp called with any suited cards, and probably walked away with like 2K. He was just on an enormous heater. It was quite fun to watch. I always like watching those players win because it is just great for the game when like the player who is playing every hand just keeps hitting. In this hand, there's a brand new player who's just sat down. I've never played with this player before. This is literally his first hand at the table. I'm the effective... Or I guess we're both sitting with about 500, which is the max. I had just basically rebought after that previous hand, and he had just sat down.
Is he a younger guy or an older guy?
He's probably a mid-20s Hispanic gentleman. Looks like definitely he's drinking. He looks like he's probably good. Looks like he's probably a fun player.
Sweet.
But I'm not sure. Like those players can really go either way, especially pre-flop, and that kind of comes to the pre-flop action, where he's going to open the action in the low jack to 20 in a 1-3 game, which is on the larger side. And I am in the cutoff with 10 of clubs, 10 of diamonds, and I like to just call here. Because I think sometimes, it's just one of these things where when he raises so big, and like I don't know the type of player he is. My default thought is like, wow, that's a big raise pre-flop. Like it weights him more towards strong hands, where like putting 10s in the 3-betting range is not necessarily ahead of his raising to 20 range.
Interesting. I don't know. I've seen enough bullshit in low stakes poker that I don't really put much stock in this sizing. I mean, I also think you can 3-bet fold for value.
That's true.
So, you can do that. So I would 3-bet here, especially in the cutoff, because then we're going to let the button and the big blind in, and it's going to suck.
Yeah, the players behind me are definitely more tight passive. Like I'm especially to this sizing, I don't expect all of them to come in. Maybe one. But yeah, I could definitely be 3-betting here against the low jack open. It's more just like, and if it were a player who I had seen play, and after seeing him play, I would have been 3-betting him all day, quite large. In this situation, but with an unknown, I don't, it's one of these things where when you're playing live poker and a guy opens to 20, like it does scream strength a lot of the time from some player types. So
sure, no, I think that's fair. Yeah, I don't think calling is terrible. The thing I hate about calling with 10s is like if you get it when you're not on the button, but specifically not from the button, because I think on the button calling with 10s is probably good a decent chunk of the time, but when you're not on the button and you might let in the button or someone behind you, a lot of times it becomes a set mining hand, which I think is really bad because I think 10's a premium hand and you want to play a heads up pot with the betting lead and a strong hand versus if you're like in the middle of a bunch of people out of position, you're going to feel like you're just trying to flop a set, fit or fold, and it's like a terrible hand. It's a terrible hand to construct bluffs with. So it's not even like it plays well multi-way if you miss. So
yeah, no, I think that's all fair. And I'd be happy to, like I said, I definitely do 3-bet with 10s a good portion of the time. There are also, I should know, a handful of players at the table who I would never ever dream of 3-betting 10s against because their opening range is like, all beats 10s.
Right, yeah, for sure. Obviously we have that kind of read on a person. But okay, whatever. So you call. Do you get anyone behind you?
The small blind calls. So the button does not, which is, definitely dodge a bullet there.
Yep.
For all the reasons that you stated. I do agree that, it would suck if the button called and we just were put in an awkward spot in the middle.
Yep.
Okay. So there's about 60 in the pot, 480 effective at this point. And the flop, is going to come pretty darn good. It's going to come King of Diamonds, King of Hearts, 6 of Clubs. So King, King, 6, Rainbow. I'd say that's a pretty good flop without having an overpair or hitting a set.
Yeah, I love this flop.
The small blind checks, and the low jack now bets 20.
Cool.
I think I have a pretty straightforward call here.
Agreed. I don't think you could do anything. It'd be crazy to raise. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not that crazy. You can get value from like 9s, 8s, 7s, but I don't know. I'd probably just call.
Yeah, I think just calling here is fine, and we can kind of evaluate turns. And I do want to talk a little bit more about the turn because there are some interesting facets that come in there. So I call in the small blind folds. I don't think it's too interesting of a flop action. It's like, well, I have a pretty good pair. I certainly am ahead of plenty of his range. I'm going to call here.
Yeah, and it's great that the small blind folds. I actually think if small blind called here, we're definitely in a stickier spot.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair as well. But he doesn't, which is definitely really nice to get it heads up against this guy. And the turn is now going to come off a total brick. It's the 4 of Hearts. Because it's not a total brick, it does introduce a heart flush draw. 4-4 gets there.
Okay. Probably shouldn't have.
And he now bets 20.
Ooh. So we're raising, right?
Now I think I do want to raise.
Absolutely.
I do think that, he can have strong hands here. Like, I do think players can have strong hands here. But, I definitely want to raise for value. The question here, for me really was not should we raise, but if we raise and he calls, are we checking back rivers a lot?
I think it depends on the run out, but no, I don't think so. I think I would bet again on the river.
Because I think, he can... I think players can definitely do this sort of down betting a lot with, other pairs that are better than ours also. Probably not aces, but, jacks. Might be betting small here. Because I think players mistakenly perceive, seeing 2 kings on the board as being, bad for a hand like jacks. When obviously it's not. It's way better to see 2 kings out there than 1 king.
Well... I think you are going to value own yourself a lot if you raise here and then bet river. But I also think you're going to make a bunch of money too.
Because what hands are we getting value from on the river once we raise and get called?
7s, 8s, and 9s, and ace 6 probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus you're losing to jacks and queens.
Yeah. So it's probably pretty close. But anyway, I do elect to raise. I think this is something where another sort of post-flop, a bit of studying I've done on a post-flop course, article, video, something, that was you can definitely take advantage of these. One thing that you can do when you don't necessarily have a range advantage, but you are kind of near the top of your range, you have a pretty strong hand, and your opponents show weakness and you're in position, is you can raise turn and then check back river a lot when you have kind of a second pair, kind of good. And my hand might be too good for that, being pocket 10s. It's possible that this hand can be a bet on the river. But I was kind of thinking, if I get called here, once you get called, at least you're in position and the river's going to check to you a lot and you can kind of make your decision on how you want to approach it. Which I think is just super interesting because I think a lot of players kind of just call here and then you handcuff yourself a lot on the river when your opponent continues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really awkward and you kind of have to call. But now once your opponent has barreled 3 streets, it's you're not really ahead of a lot of what they're representing.
No, that's true. I think that's a fair point. I guess just a bit of clarity for the listener. So the reason that Josh and I, as soon as the guy bet 20, we started talking about raising. So this is a common pattern in live poker where people will bet the same size twice, basically, or bet and then bet a smaller size, or bet and then bet an ever so slightly larger size. It just screams that they have a 1-pair hand and they're trying to see where they're at. And usually you want to, it's just really useful information and you can tailor your, we're sort of concluding that this guy does not have a king here. So We're pretty sure we're going to have the best hand a lot, and that's why we want to raise. I certainly don't want to play for stacks here, so I don't think you need to raise something crazy, but Yeah, I mean, I think your point also about potentially checking back the river is very valid. It depends how thin we want to go, and it depends on the river. I think if the river is like a 7 and 8 or a 9, we should check it back because there's just less hands we're beating. But
And that's a good point. I didn't do this sort of range analysis live where it's like, yes, we are losing to jacks and queens and possibly aces some of the time, but I do think most players are betting larger with aces here. And we're beating 7s, 8s, 9s, and if he has some combos of 6s or some combos of 4s even that are doing this. But the thing is, I mean, as a hand with it's just a 6 or a 4 going to call another bet. Maybe not. It's one of these, it's interesting. But I also think I probably raised too small here. I make it 75.
So, yeah, I don't know. Let's say I mean I wouldn't want to go bigger than like 100. I think 100 would be like probably as big as you'd make it. And if it went call, you'd be 300 in the pot and you have 360 behind. So it starts to get. I mean, it starts to get a bit dicey. I think.
That's a good point.
I like your sizing quite a bit. I actually like your sizing. I think this is appropriate.
Yeah, because you make a good point where then you do maybe force yourself into playing for stacks if he has an opportunity if we made it 100 or bigger to just like jam river, and we're just in like a brutal.
We hate
spot.
life, yeah.
So we make it 75 because I do think I think raising here is a slam dunk with my hand. I mean, especially after I've under-repped it pre-flop. This is going to be about as strong as I am. Like I'm probably not doing a whole lot of calling with any kings in the cutoff.
Right, king queen off, right?
Yeah, I might 3-bet that sometimes, but I probably would call that.
Well, I mean, I agree you should 3-bet it mostly, but I think that versus if you're talking about not 3-betting 10s because you think he might be strong, I think you're probably not 3-betting king queen off.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Although king queen might be getting towards a fold if you think that to that sizing, probably close. But we're splitting hairs about pre-flop again. Not that we would ever do such a thing. So I make it 75, and he does call.
Okay.
So, which we love to see. I mean, he doesn't think about it for too long in calls.
So for those just listening, we have a flop. So hero in this hand, we're playing 1-3. The hero has pocket 10s. And calls a open from the low jack in the cutoff. There's a small blind comes along, so we have $60 in the pot. Flop comes king, king, 6, rainbow. Low jack bets, hero calls, small blind folds. Turn is the 4 of hearts. Low jack bets again, $20. Hero rakes at 75. Low jack calls. We now have $250 in the pot, and we're going to a river. Does that all sound right?
Yep, and we probably should have done that for the previous two hands as well. But with these handy dandy visuals here, I forget that some people probably don't have access to looking at them. So our apologies there. But yes, that's exactly what happens. And now the river is going to come the 9 of clubs, so offsuit 9, and he checks it over to me quickly.
I'll probably check back.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point that you make where if the river comes like an offsuit deuce, maybe we can. I mean, we probably can bet 75 again, or like 80, or maybe even 100, and get value from another one pair hand.
Yeah, I actually I'm thinking about this more. So now we're losing to 9s. So we're losing to 3 combos of 9s. We're losing to queens and jacks. And there's 6 combos each there. So we're losing to 15 hands, and then we're beating 8s and 7s, and then some a6 suited probably. Maybe if those hands even call. I mean, it's starting to get thin. I do think we can bet fold here, to be honest with you. I'm going to be honest with you. I think we can bet fold. We could bet 100 and then just fold.
Yeah, and I think it might be dicey with the 9, but definitely, if the run out was like an offsuit deuce, because I was probably I was kind of dialed in on I think that, I wanted to kind of raise on the turn to buy showdown where, my hand is good, but it's not fantastic. But he is kind of representing a one pair hand. But I think that this particular hand, like pocket 10s, you're probably right that it's strong enough where I can, actually go for another street of value just because it is quite high up in my range.
Right. I mean, I think you could bet folding here is just so good, right? Because even with this 9, if he jams, obviously he has pocket 9s, right? That's it. He has pocket 9s. And he will probably call with 8s and 7s. So,
yeah.
I mean, what the heck? You know, like I don't normally go this thin live, which I've been trying to go thinner. And I think this is one of those spots where it's like there's value to be had. Like I think you can get called by worse. I really do think you're gonna call with 8 and 7, especially if you just make it 100.
Yeah, but I contented myself with my thin raise on the turn, and I check back, and he says I have a 4.
Wow. Wow.
So it's at this point that I realize that he is probably a little bit more aggressive, which was compounded when I later folded pocket 8s pre-flop against a kind of older player jamming, and I like flat called then jamming, and I was like, well, this guy's got me beat. And then this player called like $300 all in pre-flop and had 6-4 suited, and I was like, wow, that that was the hand where I was like, wow, never, can't wait until I pick something up against this player, and then didn't.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Yeah, I think you were getting... I don't know. He might have called... If he's calling your turn raise with a 4, he's going to call your river.
Yeah, he might call the river bet. But he also might not. I mean, with the 9 coming out, he might just see it as an overcard and fold. But,
he has a read. That's the thing. He has a read that you're bullying him.
He put me on ace-king. Wait. No, that doesn't... Wait. No, that doesn't work.
For sure, man. I think we can go for thin value there. I'm not criticizing you because I think I would have done the same thing, but I think we can go for thin value.
Yeah, I mean, really, this podcast, we got to rename it. Like, it's like, how thin can we go?
Yeah, I think Bankroll Burners is a much better name for our podcast, Josh. Let's be honest.
Then how thin can you go?
Usually we're the ones being taken to Value Town.
That's true. I mean, if you can, we had that. It's all about judging relative hand strength, seeing how thin you can go, and in both cases, we have proven ourselves less than capable.
Exactly. Okay, so I'm about to go over one of the worst hands I've played in a long time. So just feel free to roast me in the comments. This is not a safe space. So feel free to roast me.
And in the comments, please roast both Mike and myself, as the hands, even before we get to this hand, the hands we've gone over have already had multiple questionable decisions on almost every street. So please comment how you would have played the hand better.
We are consistently bad, okay? These are not little errors. This is every street. All right. So this is a 2-5 game. Not the same game. So, but I mean, it's the same room, but different day. So, 2-5, 500 cap, best bet Orange Park. And in this particular hand, the straddle is on. The straddle has been on intermittently. I found that the one thing I will say about the 2-5 game at Orange Park is the straddle is almost never like consistently on, which is sort of lame. Like even in late night games, even at like 2 in the morning, like you still only have half the table straddling, which is really kind of like why. But it's sort of a bummer. But anyway, just a little bit of a vent. I mean, whatever.
I find the same thing at the 1-3 games in New Hampshire and Mass. That most of the time it's going to be like a few players who are straddling and a few players who are like vehemently against it, basically. Which is fine because if you could, most of the time I find that there are a few people who are either open to it or like just doing it without being prompted, and then you can really get a good round of it going. But obviously there are always going to be a few players who just are there to play small stakes and don't want to bump it up, which is their prerogative.
And that's fine. But I mean, although like in 2-5, there's probably a little less of that, because they're not playing the smallest game in the room.
Right.
I do think that even good players, a lot of them still don't see straddling as plus EV. Like you and I are firmly in believing that like straddling is good because if you have an edge in the game, you want it to be a bigger game. So,
I mean, I do think it goes both. I do think it goes both ways a little bit. Where if you have an edge, you likely can exacerbate that edge deep stacked because players like really don't know how to play deep, and when you straddle, you cut the stacks in half. So that's one aspect where maybe it's not. And people definitely debate this a lot. It's like, you're burning money putting more in pre-flop. Like, okay, sure, but the 2 big blinds versus like the significant, doubling the big blind size for the game is going to be a worthwhile payoff if you have an edge. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you're right. Like if you are really trying to leverage your post flop edge, maybe you don't want to straddle, but
which anyway. I'm not, as you can see.
Yeah, exactly. So in this hand, the straddle is on. It's 2-5-10. I'm in the big blind, the middle blind. We're 500 effective with the main villain, who sat down fairly recently and has already begun straddling, so he's pretty cool. And it actually it folds to the button in this hand, who limps. And I have 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, and I go ahead and complete, which I think is probably fine. Maybe it's too loose. I don't know.
I think that's fine. I think that you can definitely complete from the small blind, or I mean, this is basically the small blind, like in this game, in this case. It definitely depends on the guy to your left also. Like, there are some people who are just going to, like, raise every straddle, and then you can, like, take advantage of that.
And I didn't have any reads on this dude since he'd sat down. And he was kind of a youngish dude. I don't know, youngish white guy.
But I don't mind. I mean, if you're going to have hands that you put in just your completion range, I like, small pocket pairs, connectors, some suited, some not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like 9-8. I was like the worst unsuited connector. It's like pretty bad because you get those reverse implied odds with your straightening. But whatever.
Yeah, but you're not going to go. You would assume in a limped pot you're not going to play against ace king most of the time.
Well, but it's not a limped pot because the straddle now raises.
Okay.
40. The button folds, and I do call here. And I do not know if this is too loose or not.
I think that is probably a bit too loose once he puts it up to 40. I would guess. I haven't looked at my straddle charts with regarding 9 of spades, 8 of clubs, and big blind completion recently. I don't know. It's probably not awful, but like being out of position with like a kind of mediocre, like as you say, kind of the worst connectors. Like, I think it's probably fine to just fold. Just be like, well, that's fine.
Yeah, I agree. I probably should have folded this hand, but I didn't. So, I call.
Well, I'm not going to be the pre-flop police. You've given me plenty of leeway today, so therefore, I'll extend you the same courtesy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I feel like this hand's very cuspy. I think that, like, obviously it was like 9-7 off. I would fold it.
But I mean, would you complete 9-7 off?
Probably not.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, what are like worse hands that I'm completing with that I'm not going to fold? Just like random suited crap. Like, I probably would fold a lot of random suited crap here.
Yeah, but I mean, 9-7, I'd probably rather call 9-7 suited than 9-8 offsuit.
Right, but I probably have like 10-5 suited,
Yeah. But I think we can do like a plenty of folding because we are out of position to this guy. Yeah. Like, I don't love playing out. As we both know and have rehearsed many times on this podcast, playing out of position sucks, and you should do it less.
Yep, agreed. So I should fold, but I don't fold. I call.
That's fine.
All right. So the flop comes 7 of clubs, 6 of spades, deuce of clubs.
Wow. So we got 2 overs and an open ender and a backdoor flush draw, so to speak.
Correct.
It's not a great backdoor flush draw, which is why
it's not a
so
very good backdoor flush draw, but it does exist. Maybe the 8 high backdoor flush draw. So. I check here, which I think I don't necessarily need to do. I think I actually can lead here probably sometimes.
We can do some leading here.
I can have deuces and 6s, maybe 7s. A lot of people would have 7s. I might not, but a lot of people would. I could have 7-6. I probably don't have like lots of any 2 pair other than that, but I may have like every 7-6. So I don't know. I think leading here is pretty okay, but I don't lead. I choose to check.
And I think that's fine. I mean, I'm also happy to check raise here or check call. Like, we do have a lot of equity against most of his range with 2 overs and a straight draw. So I think putting money in the pot one way or another is going to turn out okay.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, blind versus blind is something you don't get to do very often. Like, we need to remember here that our ranges are very similar.
Right.
Like, he's not going to have, like, he's not weighted towards ace king, ace queen, king queen, ace 10 suited, whatever. Like, he's not weighted that much towards those hands. He can have all sorts of trash.
That's true. That's true. Although, you would think that you would probably have, like, more deuces.
Yes, for sure.
And, like, probably more 6s. But, like, he could raise with 6s and 7s plenty.
Right.
So yeah, I know what you're saying. He probably, I mean, and he does obviously still have all the over pairs, and you like just have none of them. So that's sort of the one place. But he also has like lots of random over cards that you don't. So yeah, point taken.
I choose to play this as a check call is my intention. I actually think I have like lots of better like bluffs to check raise with on this flop. Like I have so many combo draws or like pair like low pair plus draw or something. Like, well, maybe not that, but like I definitely have lots of combo draws here, so I don't really think I want to put this into my check raising range.
Yeah, I don't know that we have all that many combo draws, just because like I think like the good suited connectors we're probably raising a lot. Like 9-8 suited, you're probably raising, I would assume, knowing you.
Yeah, and I probably have like 5-4 suited.
Yeah, but like I just think there aren't actually that many combos that you're limp calling. Like 5-4 of clubs and like I don't know, 4-3 of clubs, I guess.
Yeah, and do I have a lot of just like random flush draws? Like, because I'd probably rather raise flush draws than straight draws.
Right. But having the overcards is also nice, and it does depend on his sizing. So what does he do?
Well, he bets 80.
Okay, well that makes me want to raise. And this is like I said, this is definitely something that I've been trying to work on in my game, where I see like a large sizing that's like near pot, and I'm like, I shouldn't raise here a lot.
Right. Agreed.
Which is not necessarily the case when people are not polarizing when they use polarized bet sizes.
Yeah, I actually was pretty sure he had an overpair when he did this. And like probably not aces or kings, probably like nines through queens. Something like that.
Okay.
That was what I thought would do this, because like I don't know about in your games, but in Florida, I see people raise like bet huge with like one pair type holdings and overpairs like on sort of wet looking boards because they're really afraid of being outdrawn.
Yes, definitely.
So I definitely thought that he was likely to have an overpair here, which made me not want to check raise.
People play these hands. I mean, it's also where I think in both of our games, another thing that we see live players do a ton is like if they have a hand like tens or nines that they flat call with after you raise and they flop an overpair, they just put all of the money in.
Right.
When you're like, okay, like sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So
yes, I do know what you mean, and I agree that his range is weighted there. But as you also said, like he can definitely have like club draws. Like club draws can definitely do this.
Agreed. Yeah, I think he can be. I don't think he necessarily has a super strong hand here.
But his value range, I mean, probably not doing this with like top set a whole lot.
Agreed. So I do choose to play this as a check call. Like I don't need to have very many bluffs given his massive sizing.
Yeah.
Like I'm basically for value, I'm only going to check raise my sets here, so I really don't need very many bluffs. Like I probably can just stick to like combo draws.
We could probably raise 7-6 also.
Yes,
because that is ahead of like, I mean, it blocks his sets and it unblocks his overpairs and like beats all of them. So, but yeah, I don't think we need to check. I don't think we need to check raise here. I'm happy calling.
Yeah, I think raising here sometimes is probably fine, but I go ahead and call.
Okay.
So the turn now comes the ace of hearts. So once again, the button in this hand, the button limps. Hero is in the middle blind with 9-8 offsuit, 9 of spades, 8 of clubs. Completes. Straddle raises to 40. Button folds. Hero calls. Flop comes 7-6 deuce with 2 clubs. Hero has an open ender and check calls an $80 bet. We're now at $250 in the pot. And the turn is the ace of hearts.
Okay.
And what I really, really wish I had done on this card, but did not do, is lead.
Yeah, I think leading is interesting here because I mean his range is definitely weighted towards those overpairs, like you mentioned. But I also think like the it's kind of weird because I think you like the leading works a lot, especially if you plan to run like a multi-street bluff against those hands. But like the hands that he is bluffing with on the flop are probably a lot of ace-x of clubs.
True.
Which now we are just never gonna get a fold from.
True.
So I don't know that I fully endorse leading here when it is a card that's a lot better for his range.
I don't think it's really that better for his range, though, because this is blind versus blind, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, I don't think he has that many more aces than I do. I do see your point, though, that, like, ace-x of clubs is something he can have as played.
But, I mean, what aces are you limp calling with?
Well, I can have, like, I actually think a hand that I'm likely to play this way, like, could be, like, ace-7, ace-6, ace-deuce off. Right?
Think,
like
I don't really like playing offsuit aces as like limp calls.
Yeah,
But I don't know that you would. I don't know that. I mean, do you think you would want? Do you think that you would be doing that with like ace? Like if you look down in the big blind at ace 7 off and the button limps, aren't you probably raising that a lot of the time?
I'm probably raising it. You're right. I probably don't have those hands, so never mind. But,
And I would say most players, maybe you can capitalize on that where he thinks most players are going to do that with an ace. But like if it's interesting, it kind of depends on how knowledgeable he is and what he's kind of thinking about your range also. Because like I know that like if you tried to represent an ace against me on this board, I'd be like, you are never check calling an ace or limp calling an ace pre-flop with this action.
I guess you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe you've convinced me that a lead here isn't particularly good. I guess because I thought he had so many overpairs, I thought he would hate this card. Like, I mean, I think he's going to check back a lot, so it takes away my opportunity. This is all that was going through my head. So I was like, well, I can't check raise this card because it's probably going to go check. Because, I mean, and if it doesn't go check, fine. But I think it is going to a lot. And so it's going to take away my ability to, run some good, run some multi-street bluffs, so therefore I should lead. But I don't know.
But if he's got if he's got like tens and the turn and it goes check and the river comes a brick, I think you can don't you think you can lead big on river and get him to fold a lot?
Well, you're getting ahead of us here. So
I mean that's kind of what I think is like if he checks it back and you kind of sense, because like if he bets here, right? It's likely that he's like run into an ace or he's got a different sort of club draw.
Yeah, I think if he bets here, actually, we probably, depending on sizing, either supposed to check fold or possibly check call if we have if we're getting the right odds. But I think we're supposed to check fold to bets here a lot if they're reasonably sized.
Yeah, and maybe that does mean we get, but then it's like, do we really want to lead and like in a card that, because I think this card is better for his range, even though his range is probably a lot wider. Than someone like opening from under the gun or something.
Sure, yeah, of course.
It's still this card is still a lot better for the opener's range.
Okay, you've convinced me that I was wrong. I shouldn't lead this card, and it's good that I didn't. So good job, me. I played this street correctly, but I thought about it and came to the conclusion that I played it wrongly. So it's almost as though I played it wrongly.
And maybe you're right. Like if you are really sure that like if you really feel like he's so weighted towards like tens, jacks, queens, then like, and I'm discounting nines only because you have a 9, then maybe it is right to lead here. But I just think there are enough other, because his range is so wide pre-flop, that he can have like a lot of other hands that he's taking that sizing with, like that are bluffing. Like he should have a lot of club combos that he's raising. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, the thing about those club bluffs too that really sucks is like we are losing to those hands because we have 9 high. So like even if he just has like queen jack of clubs, like it's pretty brutal here. Like we're really open. It's really hard for us to win this pot, and this is why you shouldn't play offsuit 9-8 out of position. By the way,
but this also leads, and again, I realize I might be getting ahead, but this also makes me think if there are a lot of club draws that are unpaired and the river bricks out, like that is another opportunity to just kind of go for a big bluff on the river. But I don't know. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But anyway, what winds up happening after we check?
It goes check.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure he has an overpair. Or, I mean, no longer an overpair. I'm pretty sure he has like tens. Because like, yeah. I mean, he could also have like king 10 of clubs, I guess. That's like taking its equity.
Yep. I think that's completely reasonable.
I think that is a smaller portion of his range than the overpairs. So
I think he probably shouldn't have an ace when he checks back.
Yeah, agreed. So, and this is getting super tricky. But the river is a brick. It's the 3 of diamonds. I guess 5-4 gets there, but
okay. You know what? Yeah. It does.
Which is a hand I could have. But okay. Well, that's what I was thinking, actually. Is like, well, I could have 5-4 here. I can have all the sets. I can have an ace. So I want to bet. That's what I was thinking.
And I like I said, I mean, I kind of agree that his range is weighted towards either unpaired club draws that have decided to take their equity, or pairs between 7 and ace exclusive. So, I mean, how often are those hands folding? It's the other thing. Like, some people, and this is annoying to not have reads on the player, because it's like, it really could go either way, where it's like, oh, he has a pair between sevens and aces. I should bet here because he's going to fold and be like, you and I have both played with these player types, and I'm sure our listeners have too. Like, people who are like, you hit that ace, didn't you? And they, like, fold their kings face up, or players who are like, snap call.
Right.
So, it's kind of an interesting spot.
Let's say he's got jacks, queens, tens, nines, eights. How big do we have to go?
I think we just have to bet, like, pot.
Okay.
Because, like, I do think that you can kind of depolarize here once he checks back. Also, like, if you have an ace here, I think you can bet quite big on this river.
Do you think we could jam?
I don't know if the jam's getting called.
Well, that's what I mean.
Oh,
right.
Interesting. But, like, I don't know if we can, because, like, I don't know if we can ever jam for value.
Right. Like, that's the sort of the thing that, like, it's like, what value hands do we show up with here that would want to jam? Is like sets.
Exactly 4-5
and sets.
And sets. Right. Because it is interesting where I feel like we can almost, like, it doesn't really matter what we have. Like, we can have an ace or two pair or a set, and we should be ahead of his range at this point.
Right.
Right. So it's almost like I wanna bet, like, large, but, like, not jam with, like, our whole value range. And then it's like, do we just do that with, like, but it's just so weird because, like, I don't know, it's very player dependent.
Yeah, I think that, like, probably like 200 is probably the right sizing here. I was thinking I didn't want to bet small because he might just get curious and call.
Oh, and I think that's completely fair, because I think if most players, I would say with a pair, if you bet small after they check back turn, are just going to snap call.
Right.
Which is fair. I mean, I think that I would call for sure if my opponent bets small here.
Right. So probably 200 is a good sizing. But anyway, I bet my whole stack.
So we jam. So see, I think that is interesting, because it's like, I don't know, because
I think the word you're looking for is punt.
Because I don't like I just don't think we need to bet that big. That's like, here's the thing, right? It kind of depends on what we're targeting. Where pretty much any amount is going to get a fold from his flush draws.
Right.
Right? Any amount. And that does lead us to kind of want to bet big when we have value, because but then it's like his value isn't actually that strong, and like all of our value hands beat all of his value hands.
Right.
So it's like, should we actually be betting small with like all our value here?
Well, I don't know. I don't agree with that. I think we should be betting. I think I think your point about depolarizing makes a lot of sense, where depolarization being, if you were bluffing, but then you run into a reasonably strong hand that is probably the best hand, you can bet as though you made a super strong hand and still get called. That's depolarization.
Yeah. When you present your hand as nuts or nothing, you can get called by like fairly weak hands, because they think, well, it's nuts or nothing and I'm beating nothing. And then you show up with not nuts, but better than nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Very clearly explained.
So I agree that like depolarization here would make a lot of sense with an ace.
So it's weird to think about what we're supposed to do with bluffs.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think that jamming is just really is a punt, because like, what are we representing at this point? It's like, we just make we're no longer representing an ace. That's the problem. That's why it's bad, because we're not going to do this with an ace. But we would probably bet 200 with an ace. And that's why I'm saying, like, I think jamming is just so bad.
Yeah.
Because like with both value and bluffs, it's bad, because like, I don't know. It's just like, we're representing such a narrow range. Like, I guess if we have that range, but no, I just want to take like a 200 sizing with our whole value range, with our values and our bluffs. I think it's just, that's the size.
Yep, I think you're probably right. I do agree. I think you explained it well, where I would agree that like jamming doesn't make sense, because we really should just be taking a 200 sizing with because all of our value is beating all of his, and we just want to present a meaty sizing that he can't say no to, unless he can say no to it.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah. Okay, so we jam, and what happens?
He snaps me off with pocket jacks.
Okay. So he's like, so he correctly calls out that you would not be jamming with a good hand.
Yeah. So massive punt. Just punt city for me over here.
I mean, that's the moral of today's story is, why are you listening to us?
No, we love you very much and we appreciate it. And we hope that you can learn from our mistakes.
And we also hope that you will like, comment, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on.
Please do that. It really warms our heart. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in.